everyone. Thank you so much for coming along this afternoon. For me, it feels very special and also slightly strange to be back in this very room because 11 years ago, almost to the day, I started my master's in modern languages here. So yeah, that does feel special and slightly odd. Back then, Henrike wasn't around yet, which to be honest feels also slightly unimaginable. And she joined a couple of months later. I remember that time as a very busy time. I was feverishly writing essays, trying to apply for doctorates. Henrike was moving to a new place, starting a new job, trying to teach us 4 MST students. And I'm sure she was pretty much doing a million other things as well. And while we were all running around, I completely neglected one thing which Henrike didn't. And that was keeping my eyes open, seeing and really learning about the environment around me. So I will never forget this one day when Henrike told me what she had learned about the 4 statues that stand on pillars in front of the Taylorian. Namely, they represent the 4 languages that were key to the institution in the early years. So French and German, Spanish and Italian. So I hadn't even noticed there were statues. And when I told Henrike that, she reacted in shock. And then said rather calmly, "Man sieht nur, was man weiß. You only know what you see. You only see what you know this way around. You only see what you know." And this is exactly what this event today is all about. We want to show you and read you a little bit from this book, Luisa Hewitt, The Girl Who Lived in the Library. And we want to tell you a lot about this institution so that when you come back, you notice so much more just because you know so much more about this place. So how we thought we could do this best is I'll give you a brief intro on Luisa Hewitt, on her book, on her background, and then we read you a couple of passages. We will then take you on a tour around the basement because this is where she grew up. And in the end, we will go to the special exhibition in the Voltaire room that has been set up for the annual German Studies Conference back in September. And there'll be some more original material about the Taylorian and about German at Oxford. So right, I'll start with the intro. This is the book. So who's the girl? Which library? Is it really the Taylorian? Yes, it is. So Luisa Hewitt was born in the early 1880s in the basement of this very building because she was the daughter of Heinrich Krebs. Heinrich Krebs, just fast forward, this is the building, those are the 4 statues, I didn't notice. And this is Heinrich Krebs, the librarian, and his daughter Luisa, she was about 14 then. Heinrich Krebs was in fact the 2nd librarian of the institution. The institution opened in 1849 and he became librarian in 1871 and retired in 1921. So 40 years in total, 50 years in total. And that's a long time, especially because he claimed every year that he was going to retire and return to Germany. When he did retire and return to Germany, he died a couple of months later, so never retire too late. So Heinrich Krebs raised Luisa on his own because his wife, Luisa's mother, died when Luisa was about 4 years old in 1885 from a brain hemorrhage. So Luisa was raised by him, but then also by a porter and a housekeeper who also lived in the basement and who also play a big role in this book. In this book, Luisa records her memories from her life in the Taylorian from the age around 3 or 4 to the age of 17. So that's from around 1885 to 1897. And she's very honest in this novel. So this is also the reason why she uses pseudonyms. The Taylorian isn't the Taylorian, it's the Mezzofanti Library. Oxford isn't Oxford, it's Fairminster. And her father, Heinrich Krebs, is Mr. Dingley. So the text was meant to be her first novel. She had already written a couple of poems and had been published with these poems. Among other publications, one was the Oxford Poetry in 1918. She was published alongside Aldous Huxley, so she was a published author, and this was meant to be her first novel, but it never got published. After she'd finished it, she sent it to Basil Blackwell, the Oxford bookseller and publisher, and to an English professor in Sheffield. And Blackwell rejected it outright. Professor Evans in Sheffield said he saw potential in it, but she'd have to revise it. And she didn't want to. She said, "I never revise anything. I'm not going to revise this," and she put it back in the drawer. So why has the text not been forgotten? That's mainly due to two librarians here at the institution. So the first one is John Simon Gabriel Simmons, who was the Taylor Institution's librarian for Russian and Slavonic in the 1950s. When he reached out to Luisa Hewitt, he had heard about her text, and he wanted to get the original manuscript to the Bodleian and to the Taylorian. And it took some persuading. She didn't hand it over straight away, but in the end, the Bodleian got the manuscript, and it's now stored, and you can have a look at it in the Western Library, or on Friday for coffee morning at 10:30 in the Western if you want to come along. We will show some material there. So the second librarian here at the institution who's key to the edition is Jill Hues. I was back in Oxford in 2017 to do research for my doctorate, and I needed to know a little bit more about the history of this institution. And I think Emma then pointed out to me that she was the expert on the history of the institution, so I met for coffee with her. I wanted to ask her about the old shelf mark system in the Taylorian, which doesn't sound too exciting, but it actually is. We never got around to talking about that because she brought the manuscript along and urged me to read it, and I was immediately locked in. When I read it, I had the impression that Luisa's comments were so sharp. She was so good at describing the tiniest observations she had made, and she was so witty and sometimes very mean at the same time that I had the impression this is Prince Harry's spare Oxford 19th century version. So it was clear we had to get this text published. And so we did. This edition includes 3 chapters from Luisa's manuscript. There's many, many more, but those chapters deal with her time at school or her visits to Darmstadt to see her parents' family. But we chose to edit those that are really key to the institution, that describe the building, that describe the workings of the library, and that also describe her dad, because he's quite a peculiar character. So before we start the reading, I'd like to mention a couple of people, because this project could have only been completed with the help of these people. So first of all, Emma, thank you so much for your tremendous help throughout the project. That was amazing. You deciphered or decoded some pseudonyms John Simmons couldn't, so we have even more insights into the text now, helped me with some rather illegible handwriting, and then organized the Taylorian staff to really find out which room was where. So now we can take you on a tour today and really show you where we assume Luisa's bedroom might have been. So a special mention should also be made to David Hamilton, because he provided us with old plans of the building, so thank you very much for that. It made it a lot easier to track down the places, because as you might know, this is the old part of the building, but there's the new annex as well. And when you walk around the building, I at first didn't always know where I was and which was the old and which was the new part. So the old plans helped a lot. And last but not least, David suggested the title of this book, The Girl Who Lived in the Library. And this really makes her a true resident author, and thank you, Henrike, for including this book in the series to Writers in Residence. She clearly is a writer in residence here at the Taylorian. And thank you as well for telling me to always keep my eyes open to see what I know. So the edition is a result of a research stay in Oxford this spring. I wandered around the library with the manuscript, tried to find the locations, was struck by how similar everything still is compared to the 1880s, 90s. I mean, even the black marble clock in the main reading room is still in exactly the same location. Luisa mentions it. So that was fascinating. And editing a text it takes time, and it's easy to get lost in it. So thank you as well to Mark Goodhand for asking important questions in the project, such as, who's your audience? Who are you doing that for? And I have to admit that in the beginning, I was really just doing it for myself because I loved that book and I wanted to get it published. And then I thought, no, but I'm also doing it for Luisa because she wanted to get it published. And actually tomorrow is her 17th death anniversary. So she died in 1952. 55. And then I also did it for the Taylorian staff and students, because I think if you read it, first of all, you're going to have a really good time. And then when you walk around the building, when you sit in the main reading room, there's some things you can't unsee anymore. So without further ado, let's dive deep into the edition of this text to give you an idea about how funny and witty and clever Luisa was. So in that reading, I'm going to start with a foreword, and then we're going to answer some key questions you've always probably wanted to know. So first of all, where was beer stored in the Taylorian? Second of all, what is the best spot for sleeping in the main reading room? And how important are umbrellas in the life of the librarian? Spoiler alert, very important. So I'll start with a foreword. The following is a true and accurate account of all that I remember to have seen and done and felt from the age of 3 approximately to the age of 17. Detailed and minute in parts like a pen and ink drawing, it will prove tedious to the reader who is out for accident rather than for incident, and I crave the pardon of such. On the other hand, I flatter myself in offering as sincere an impression as I am able, and the contrast between German and English life, chiefly in schools, it is true, but to a certain extent outside of them, is bound to be an utterly unbiased one, since I can truly count myself as belonging to both and to neither of these nations, and have no patriotic axe to grind in blessing or cursing them. If in these pages I have given undue prominence to the appearance of people, especially of those who did not please me, if I made too many hasty and unkind reflections, I wish to disclaim responsibility for them at this date. Children are slaves to externals. My judgments have necessarily softened in the space of 40 years, and I am confident that they would be very different now about the people I knew then, since not I alone, but they too will have changed. If any should happen to recognize themselves under fictitious names, I hope they will be lenient where I've been malicious. Let them feel sure that they could repay spite with spite if they had it in them, but that they were too well bred or have at any rate forgotten me. As far as possible, I give the actual impressions made on me at the time at which I'm writing. My expressions are of today, my feelings those of 40 years ago. The portrait of my father I had not the heart to curtail within the limits of 13 years. The anecdotes are mostly of his latter period of his life at Fairminster, from 19 to 1921, when he returned to Germany. Nottingham, 28th Spring, 1931. Over to you, Anne. Chapter 1, The Big Room.
The Big Room, as it was called, a bare and unattractive, sunless kind of barn, where I was born, hardly deserved its share of the romantic halo surrounding the Mezzofanti Library. Later, it always appeared to me ironic that friends should envy me the privilege of living and breathing there. The Mezzofanti was a building of Greek proportions in the university town of Fairminster. How stately and glorious from without, how dismal and undwellable within. Only the tenants, ourselves, and the porter knew. He was a widower in my mother's days and congratulated himself on that fact in his talks with her. "Ah, Mrs. Dingledy," he would say, "this ain't a fit place to bring up a family in. It's these damp, sweaty passages as give me my rheumatism." Not a very encouraging remark to make to a bride. My father took the comfortless suite of apartments allotted him with at least outward philosophy. One never knew what he felt. Like a dog, he seemed at times susceptible to ease and luxury when supplied by others. He appreciated the elegance of a tastefully furnished house and would cosily bask in a deep armchair at someone else's fireside. It never occurred to him to go and furnish likewise. His parsimony, bred in the bone, made him unwilling to spend a halfpenny on a daily paper. Much less would he dream of spending pounds on furniture. Moreover, his dwelling was not his own, which, combined with his intention of returning to Germany in the near future, a plan of which he never lost sight for a single moment, in making him loath to contribute to the greater comfort and convenience of his family. What made this habitation so impracticable was that the other rooms, for there were such, had not been designed by the builder with any idea to convenience, or apparently with any idea at all. They might, and did ultimately, serve the purpose of storing an overflow of books and periodicals. Meanwhile, they lay so remote from one another that 3 or 4 mutual enemies could have lived in them respectively without being incommoded. The basement kitchen was on a level, it is true, with the dining room, big room, but separated by the length of a straggling stone passage. midway down which a door on the one hand led to a coal cellar and on the other hand to an area. A little further, at a turn of the passage, two doors, again on either hand, opened into the servants' bedroom and a small room known as the beer room, the origin of which name I will presently explain. So that hot viands carried along here would have plenty of opportunity to cool. The area I referred to gave on to a sort of underground, in this case undergarden, cellar or cave, consisting of 3 vaults in which the ashes of a whole 12-month were allowed to accumulate. The sanitary inspector remaining in blissful ignorance of this state of affairs. In the nearest of the 3 vaults, the one and only lavatory was situated. Here the walls oozed and dripped in damp weather, and the flags shone and perspired. If you turned to the right of the entrance to the vaults, you came to a pleasant rockery faced by the porter's windows. Friendly lace curtains and geraniums, or winter cherries, converted this corner of the building to homeliness.
In this room, known as the sitting room, though nobody ever sat there for long at a time, my parents at rare intervals entertained friends to tea. It being obvious, for reasons already stated, impossible to invite them to a meal in the basement. Here in the segment then, my mother would sometimes, accompanying herself on her piano, sing such songs as Ruth, The Better Land, Son of My Soul, a setting secularized by variations, and of course many German classical and traditional songs. One of these was called The Cuckoo, and in its refrain was a question to that prophetic bird as to how many more years the singer had to live. Ach, nur ein Jahr oder 2, Kuckuck, das ist zu bald. What, only 1 year or 2, cuckoo, that is too soon. My mother sang probably on a Sunday evening, that being the only day on which a fire was afforded here. Probably too the cuckoo clock, more dateless and alive than its Victorian roommates, would join in, and that did not matter. Her voice would have to battle, as mine in later years, with the clamour outside of the Salvation Army, of too many church bells, and of several prophets, all of whom chose the same spot from which so to shout their revelations, namely the Pretender's Pillar. For the mezzofanti stands, as you are aware, at the busiest corner of St. Lambert Street, one side towards Fletcher Street, but looking on the other across to the Pillar and St. Perkins Church, and comprising even Nimbus College Corner in its view. We thought we would have a little interlude here because, thanks to several colleagues, we have been able to identify most of the songs that Luisa's mother sang, and they are a really interesting mix of German and English devotional material. So the Better Land comes from a collection, Favorite Sacred Songs, and The Son of My Soul is a hymn by John Keble. Luisa's mother was obviously interested also in the Oxford movement and in learning about the content here around Oxford. But the tune for Son of My Soul, some of the Germans might recognize. It's a German tune, Großer Gott, wir loben dich, a version of the Te Deum, actually Catholic, but then popularized also in the Protestant area because they're coming from Darmstadt being Protestant, but the Keble version then giving over to this type of emotional emotion. Yeah. We aren't doing the German one because the only version we could find is one for guitar and voice. But so the Volksliederarchiv in Freiburg provided us with a complete backstory, and it seems quite pertinent with Luisa's mother dying in her late 20s. Thinking about, so it's asking the cuckoo how many more years she has to live, and the cuckoo isn't giving her many years. And the Better Land, words by Mrs. Hermans, is a dialogue between a little child and his mother, about what is the ideal country, and the first, what the child imagines is some oriental flavor, but in fact the mother then says no, the better land is where there are no tears and we are eternally saved. So also very devotional song.
read from the library. The library was a room of noble dimensions, alternately intersected with high windows of proportionate width and graded bays of bookshelves filled with elegantly bound books. A gallery ran around the roof, to which an iron spiral staircase gave access from below. This gallery was also lined with books and lit by 4 semicircular windows, each at one corner and containing seats. They were the arches of the windows below, thus broken by the gallery. 2 doors up a few more steps led to the attics, of which I spoke, and which for the most part contained tomes of bound newspapers and journals, all in foreign languages. 2 doors in the library itself led respectively to the Guardian's committee room and to a lecture room, lined also throughout with books. It was really an annex of the library, in which lectures and coachings could sometimes be held by courtesy in case of an overflow. The lecture halls proper were on the ground floor, down a wide staircase of stone, removed from our private one by the full breadth and length of the library. The upstairs lecture room was furnished with hard chairs and long tables on which lay inviting sheets of pink blotting paper and attractive quills, one of which Papa would sometimes, very rarely though, abstract for me with as great a reluctance as if he had actually to pull it from the fretful porcupine. The prevailing colour of the furniture was yellow. It was either New Zealand pine or, quite probably, good oak, excruciatingly stained and varnished. Even in my early days, the colour struck me as ugly, in wood and out of harmony with the rest. Over the immense bronze marble fireplace loomed a recess wide enough to hold a mattress. In fact, a former librarian had slept there, so he informed my father, and found it exceedingly pleasant, with the giant fire ebbing for hours beneath him. In the recess, there hung a portrait of the founder, a benevolent image enough to my childish eyes, and in the fire beneath it, I built cities and beheld visions, even among the desert of embers, to which I would creep at night, for they gave out the warmth of an ordinary living fire of a normal size. Often have I stayed to watch the last glow die, while around me the shadows deepened, such distant shadows, some of them, and I pretended to myself that ghosts or fairies or untold forces, undreamt of in my philosophy, for I was really somewhat skeptical, hovered in the darkness. They were, as far as I conceived them, not malevolent. Only sometimes there overcame me a feeling of space and vast aloneness when I became conscious of the stone corridors and staircases beyond the great doors, and of the silence there, so productive of echoes, but stretching away unbroken now.
Chapter 37, My Father. My father's virtues might be summed up in one: rectitude. He was an honest man in the full sense of the word. He was also, like many good people, a very trying man, for his faults were obvious and lay on the surface of his character like weeds and flotsam on the untreacherous camel. It never occurred to my father that others might be less honest than himself. He trusted everyone implicitly, with the exception of German beggars and French Catholics, of whom he had some exhaustive experience. But lacking imagination, he never idealized, so was never disillusioned. He believed, found himself mistaken, and believed again, according to his nature. Himself of a narrow creed and brought up in a rut of ready-made ideas, he was yet boundlessly tolerant of the creeds and ideas of others. Never speculative, his only interest lay in what was verifiable, and here he was cheerfully occupied with details, rudiments, and trivialities. Little things delighted, little things annoyed him. Slight contretemps would anger, petty expenses vex, a trifling ailment irritate or depress him. He hated to be contradicted, and any argument provoked him to such a degree that he lost his temper like a child. A child indeed, reserved at heart and with no show of feeling, he was transparent in every other respect. In a dirty word, the soul of innocence; in a polite and courtly word, unwelcome, being without the wedding garment of the graces; in a word of infants and animals, entirely at home and beloved. His umbrellas played an important part in his existence. He possessed two of them, both of strong alpaca, one a little less shabby than the other, which he used at night. They were both exceedingly large and looked as if they had been made to measure. His second worst nightmare, the worst was missing a train in London and staying the night at an expensive hotel, was that of losing an umbrella. "I've had a very bad night," he sometimes informed me at breakfast. "I dreamt that I left my umbrella on the train and could not recover it." He carried it always under his arm. One day, walking behind him in my 8th or 9th year, I drew his attention to it. "Papa, you're carrying your umbrella in the wrong way again. I shall be copying you, and then the girls at school will say, 'Luisa's got that trick from her father.'" Of this incident I have no recollection, but was told by an aunt who was there at the time. She observed, moreover, that he obediently removed the offending object and carried it in a more normal fashion, so that I sometimes did have a little influence with him.
I must have been 7 or 8 years old when I began to accompany Papa on his evening round. He would bend down and let me climb on his back, whence I surveyed the kingdom of vast rooms and halls and corridors with a sense of possessive power. When he had been through all of them, I insisted on riding round and round the library proper. 4 times round was the usual limit. 3 for a boy and 4 for a girl, he would say. Or else it was 7 times, 7 being a sacred number. But of course, never as many times as I could have wished. On one of these occasions, he pointed to a tiny crescent of light in one corner of the gallery. The northwest corner it was. "See there," he whispered, "that is the angel shadow." And he told me that it was my mother watching over us. I was moderately thrilled, and after this regularly looked out for the Engelschatten, whether alone or with him. Some nights it did not appear, and I fancy now that it must have been some sky effect, an error of the moon, most likely. I do not think I ever believed it to be my mother's spirit, for it never moved, and I thought she would have given me some sign, and not met our interest with complete indifference. Once, in a fit of exuberance, I grew insolent. Using my knees as spurs, I bid my bearer hop hop at the easel, upon which he bravely set me down, without a word, and for many days after refused to carry me.
The library opened at 11, and at 11 precisely the librarian was found in situ. In later years, however, it was oftener 5 minutes past than 5 minutes before the actual hour that he appeared. To this much of slackness he had succumbed. But in Fairminster, slackness was an admitted and time-honoured quality to which my father merely in the end conformed. His burden was an easy one. True, the library was haunted by a few exigent bores whose garrulity there was out of place. The sort of readers who, having no right and no scheme, cause more trouble than the legitimate student. There was Dr. Lloyd, who monopolised the sunniest window and discussed winter and summer underwear, a subject Papa found irresistible, in loud tones to the horror of maiden ladies, who were there to read their French shockers in peace, under the pretext of keeping up their knowledge of the language. And there was Mr. Bloggs, or Plocks as Papa called him, who wore a velvet jacket and ran round the library with his hands in his pockets, whistling. Of him my father mildly complained to the guardians as in duty bound, he opined, but they merely supplied him with an anecdote for his slender collection, to be trotted out on sundry future occasions. Leave him alone, they said, he is a genius, at which my father marvelled greatly. And there was Major Campbell, who wore black knee breeches and a long black beard and lived alone, letting down a basket for his bread from an upper window sooner than interview his baker. He did his own housework too, and took tremendous strides in the street, and never looked at a woman. He would talk to my father by the hour. I suspect that his politics were as unsound as his social economy, and that he harboured some half-baked religion. But apart from these inevitable cranks, to be found in every reading room, Papa had a light task. He catalogued a few new books and periodicals that had been bought in the previous week, submitted others on approval to the bench in the guardian's room to be inspected by them at the weekly Saturday meeting, set aside books for the binder and replaced those returned thence on the shelves, trotting or rather tramping up and down the ladders with a will, as though he relished this form of exercise and thought it was good for him, which no doubt it was.
Thank you. So now that you've heard a couple of stories from the book, it's time for the basement tour. So join us to see the basement. Amadou, would you like
Yes,
to?
so there's some logistical issues about the basement tour. Because of the narrow passages, we can only take groups of about 8 at a time. So the proposal is to take people with like 5-minute intervals. David, if you would take the first tour. So if you, like the first 8 would mind going to that corner, and then we will end up in the Voltaire room where the exhibition is, and we'll all end up there eventually all together again.
So the others can enjoy some more.
Thank